All right, let's talk about ancient wonders, but I want you to forget the pyramids for a second. Forget Stonehenge. Today, we're going way, way back to one of the very first great building projects humanity ever tackled, the incredible, mysterious wall and tower of ancient Jericho. You know, when you think of ancient marvels, your mind probably jumps straight to the pyramids of Giza, right? Or maybe the Great Wall of China. And yeah, those are absolutely incredible. But what if I told you the very first truly massive structure was built thousands of years before any of them? That's right, we are talking 9,000 BCE. That's over 11,000 years ago from today. To put that into perspective for you, this is a time when farming was still this brand new, almost radical idea. People hadn't even invented pottery yet. And the last ice age, that was still a pretty recent memory for humankind. And somehow, in this incredibly distant, ancient world, a community of people got together and built something just astonishing. A massive stone wall and an even bigger tower. Just think about that for a second. They did this without any metal tools, with no draft animals to help pull heavy loads, without the wheel, without pretty much any of the tech we think is essential for a big construction project. It's a feat that almost doesn't make sense. So this is where Jericho stops being just, some old ruin in the ground and turns into this deep, fascinating prehistoric puzzle. The fact that these structures even exist forces us to ask some really big questions. And this is the part that's so captivating. I mean, how did a society of early farmers who were living in these simple little round huts manage to organize the sheer manpower and engineer something this big? And maybe even more importantly, why did they do it? What was the point? That is the question that's been bugging archaeologists for decades. To even begin to answer that, we have to look at where they were. See, Jericho wasn't just some random spot on the map. It was a totally unique place, a true oasis, really, that made what seemed impossible actually possible. Jericho was basically the result of a perfect geographic storm. It's way down near the Dead Sea, one of the lowest places on Earth, but it had this one critical advantage, the Ain es Sultan Spring, a totally reliable, permanent source of fresh water. And that spring created this lush oasis with amazing soil. On top of that, it was a natural crossroads for ancient trade and travel routes, and it had a nice, stable climate. Long story short, it was the absolute perfect place to stop wandering and actually build a community. And that's exactly what happened. People flocked there. At its height, early Jericho was home to maybe 600 people. Now, I know that doesn't sound like much to us today, but for the Neolithic era, that was practically a mega city. It was a completely unprecedented number of people all choosing to live together, all year round, in one spot. So you've got this large, stable community in a place with plenty of resources. That's going to be how they could do it. Now let's get into the what. Let's really look at the incredible scale of what they actually managed to build. Okay, first, the wall. It was about 3.6 meters, or 12 feet tall. That's about the height of a modern two-story building. So this wasn't just some little fence. It was a massive, imposing stone barrier that was built to wrap around their entire settlement. And then there's the tower. Built right into the wall was this solid stone tower that shot up 8.5 meters. That's about 28 feet into the air. For its time, this was, and I'm not exaggerating, the world's first skyscraper. There was nothing else like it on the entire planet. And get this, they even built a really sophisticated staircase right up through the inside of it. And just let this sink in. Remember what they were working with. Their entire toolkit was made of things you could find lying around: stone, bone, and wood. And yet, with these incredibly simple tools, they managed to quarry and haul tens of thousands of huge stone blocks, organize hundreds of people, and engineer structures that would last for thousands of years. The gap between their technology and what they actually accomplished, it's just staggering. So all of this leads us right back to that big question. Why? Why would you pour so much time, so much effort, so many resources into this massive project? Well, there's no single, easy answer, but archaeologists have some really compelling theories. So, the most obvious guess is defense, right? To protect themselves from other groups. But honestly, there isn't a lot of evidence for widespread war this early on. Another really practical idea is that it was basically a giant levee, designed to protect the town from nasty flash floods that would come down from the hills. But it also could have been symbolic. Maybe it was a way of drawing a line in the sand, separating their new, organized world from the wild chaos outside. Or maybe it was just a flex, a statement of power and pride, a monument to show everyone that they could tame the natural world. In all likelihood, it was probably a mix of all these things.
And the tower? Well, the tower is a whole other mystery. I mean, sure, it could have been a simple watchtower, but some researchers found something amazing. On the day of the summer solstice, the shadow of a nearby mountain perfectly lines up with the tower, covering it before the shadow engulfs the rest of the village. Was this some kind of giant astronomical calendar, or was it the center for community rituals, a symbol for a new kind of leadership? We just don't know for sure.
And if you think all that's fascinatingly strange, get this. Archaeologists found that the people of Jericho would bury their loved ones under the floors of their homes. But sometimes they'd later go back, remove the skulls, cover them in plaster to recreate the person's face, and then stick little shells in the eye sockets. This really intense focus on their ancestors and rituals, it tells us something absolutely crucial. These people weren't just thinking about day-to-day survival. They were building a rich, complex, symbolic world just as surely as they were building a physical one.
So what does this all add up to? Well, Jericho wasn't just some ancient town that happened to have a big wall. It was a blueprint. It was a moment in history where our entire species took a giant leap into a totally new way of living. Jericho really represents one of the very first times humans decided to stay in one place for good. It's the dawn of monumental architecture. It's the beginning of large-scale cooperation that required real planning and leadership. It's the start of organized community life. You might even call it the first proto-city. It was a social experiment on a scale nobody had ever seen before. And this timeline, this really just drives the point home. The Wall of Jericho was built about 6,500 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. It predates the oldest parts of the Great Wall of China by more than 8,000 years. Jericho isn't just old, it is in a category all by itself. This is page 1, the opening chapter in the story of human civilization.
So in the end, Jericho was so much more than stone and mud brick. It was proof of a brand new idea. The idea that human beings could work together on a massive scale to completely reshape their world. It was a laboratory for social experimentation, and it was truly an early masterpiece of human ingenuity. And it kind of leaves us with a final question, doesn't it? If Jericho was the first great experiment, what are the grand experiments, the great walls, and the big breakthroughs that are going to define our own time?